You would think our lifespan would continue to rise. But right now, we've reached a point just recently, a couple years ago, where it's reversed, where we're the first generation now that is not going to outlive our predecessors.
Why did you step forward more recently and talk about stuff that would be considered to be controversial? It doesn't seem like there's a reason on why you would do that when you already have successful books, you already have a very successful podcast, and with some of the stuff that you've been talking about, you can be like deplatformed, you can be censored a lot. Like, what's the burning reason on why you feel that you have to be one of the people to step forward and talk?
You know, Mark, I mean, to be 100 with you, it doesn't even seem like I'm doing anything different. It's what I've been doing since the beginning. The difference is things are so much more polarizing now and inflammatory. And basic logic is being abandoned in many senses. Like, part of my work over the years is educating people on social structures that have led to, here, listen, just so everybody's clear on this, the United States is the fattest nation in history, in the history of humanity. Like, we're
fattest and
most chronically diseased.
Most chronically diseased, also the most dependent on pharmaceuticals. I mean, the list of
taking
things,
the most drugs,
most anxiety, most depression. I mean, it's just, the list goes on.
It's crazy because we have the most freedom too, and the most ability to do what we want.
Yeah.
Most access.
And some of that
paradox
causes those things. Yeah.
So there's this paradox taking place where, with all of our advancements in technology, in science, you would think our lifespan would continue to rise. But right now, we've reached a point just recently, a couple years ago, where it's reversed, where we're the first generation now that is not going to outlive our predecessors. It's going backwards now. But prior to that even happening, people were not necessarily living longer. They were dying longer. We found ways to just keep people with their low quality of life, just keep them kind of trucking along. And so, number one, there's that. Something is fucking off. Like, that doesn't make sense. As advanced and evolved as we're supposed to be, why is this happening? We're knocking on the door right now of 250 million United States citizens being overweight or obese. 250 million. It doesn't even make any fucking sense. 130 million US citizens are diabetic, type 2 diabetic right now, or pre-diabetic. It's a beyond epidemic proportions. 115 million Americans are regularly sleep deprived. 60% of Americans have some degree of heart disease. 50 million Americans, upwards of 50 million, have an autoimmune condition now. That shit used to be rare. All of these things were rare, and now it's absolutely invaded our society. And the thing is, here's one of the biggest reasons why I'm doing anything about this and speaking about it, is that when we're in this state of poor health, it's not that it's impossible, but it becomes substantially harder to have compassion. It becomes substantially harder to utilize your higher order faculties, executive function, analyzing simple principles of, right and wrong and context and nuance and perspective taking. It's not that it's impossible when you're not doing well, but it's harder. Just because there's a lot of physiological energy being siphoned that pulls away from the function of your brain, period. And so we have a nation of people who are very sick, fighting each other, and now in a state where they're depending on people who have, in many ways, helped them to be in this position of sickness, and they're putting their trust in them. And I said this literally at the very beginning of all this happening. I was literally just watching, he knows this, I'm watching a press conference. It was dubbed, the Italian health minister. And he was like, about 88% of folks that are having these poor outcomes have chronic diseases. And I'm just like, okay, this is what we've been training for. Let's get our citizens healthier. We see that this is the biggest susceptibility, is being sick. Let's get folks healthier. At least do some of that. But what happened was none of it. None of it. And even people who I thought were really about that life, who built their brands around I'm not gonna say that. Encouraging folks to get their programs and courses based on health and real practices of gut health and all this stuff. They abandoned that stuff. And they were saying things like, Shawn, you're right. We do need to get people healthier because it is the number one susceptibility, but we can't get people healthier overnight. Cut to, I just start throwing out peer-reviewed studies on how you can literally improve your health in a fucking day. Appalachian State University, going for a 30-minute walk. immediately boost your immune parameters, natural killer cells, neutrophils. Like, it is a temporary boost, but it happens just by going for a walk.
Yeah, one bad night of sleep can mess up the way that you regulate your glucose and things like that, right?
Just like you can improve your health. And I'm not talking about sustainable, like it's a miracle if you go for a walk, but that consistency. But also you can absolutely demolish your health in a day, and we all know this. And so, but that was the thing people were propping up to start to, because of their fear and just going with this bandwagon of, okay, we're just going to fuck everything else, pharmaceuticals. We're going to try and treat our way out of this situation like we always do and just look where we are. So for me, I'm just like, I'm a logical person. Has any of this shit worked? Because we're pretty fucked up.
Pet Project family, how's it going? You guys know who Stan the Rhino Efforting is. We've had him on this podcast 3, 4, 5 different times. Well, we've partnered with Stan and Vertical Meals. It's going to be awesome because now you guys can have Stan Efforting's cooking and his nutrition sent right to you, right to your door. Andrew, can you tell the people how to get in and save?
Absolutely. You guys got to head over to verticaldiet.com. At checkout, enter promo code Power Project for free shipping. And if you order 16 meals or more, you're going to get 2 additional ones. Again, that's at verticaldiet.com, promo code Power Project. Links to them down in the description, as well as your podcast show notes. Let's get back to this podcast.
And I'll give you a stat. Heart disease deaths. In 2020, so on average, 630,000 Americans die from heart disease each year. Mm-hmm. In 2020, it jumped up to almost 700,000 people die from heart disease. Mm-hmm. You don't hear shit about it, right? Why? Because we're less active. We're getting fatter now. The data already indicates this. We are more sleep deprived or abnormal sleep patterns, more stressed. Like all of these things, we've successfully made our society even worse just in 18 months, in 20 months. So now we're not just susceptible to infectious diseases, we're far more susceptible to all manner of diseases.
What are actionable things that people can do? Because your background in nutrition and health, I think, comes in massively. Obviously, we got sleep. Obviously, we have a couple things we can do food-wise. But like, there's some staggering stats out there about what happens to an individual when they lose like 10% of their body fat. Yeah. Which for someone that is 300 pounds, for them to lose approximately 30 pounds, you and I and probably everybody in this room has seen folks that weigh 300 pounds. We've seen them lose 30 pounds. I don't want to say easily, but we've seen them lose 30 pounds relatively quickly, 6 to 8 weeks. Maybe it would take someone a little longer. Maybe it takes a couple months. This thing is probably going to drag on for more months or be around for more months. What happens when an individual just loses even just 5-10% of their body fat?
Yeah, it's a great question. And this parlays into that final point, which is the opposite has happened, where we have higher rates of obesity now, especially in our kids. And so kids not having access to being able to go to school, place of safety, consistency, to be able to travel along and take advantage of education, now they're far behind, a year behind, 2 years. And most likely will never, quote, catch up. Like, we've disadvantaged an entire generation of children who come from where I come from, disadvantaged children. And also, they're also the ones who are experiencing the worst as far as the obesity as well. Now, here's the good news, all right? Because even within that I come from that. I get to be here with you guys. I get to make and share my life, my education, my research to empower people, to help to create more dope human beings. Because I come from those terrible circumstances, something really great came from it. You know, I have perspective. I have an audacity to stand up in the face of anything, you know? So I believe that what's happening right now for our children, and even for ourselves, but largely for these kids, this is their Great Depression. Like, you guys have probably been seeing this quote coming and going around about good times creating weak men, weak men creating hard times creating strong men, and the cycle just going on and on and on. I believe that this is that time where these hard times where it's going to develop the character and capacity. I know that it can go the opposite. It can get more fucked up. I know that. But I really believe that just looking at the cycles of life, studying history, this is going to create innovation because people are going to look at this and say, no, this is not okay. Wait a minute. We've been allowing our society to become this sick and we just have these people over here profiting? Or wait a minute. The United States was built on the number one principle here is freedom of speech. And we've allowed all these different things to happen to censor our speech and our ability to communicate with each other and education and censoring scientists, and the whole list goes on and on. No, I'm not going to allow that. And so it's going to force that innovation of change. So what can folks do? Again, I believe that this is giving us a huge opportunity. Just by losing that amount of body fat, as you mentioned, we're going to, number one, the first thing that's going to happen is dramatic decrease in inflammation. I had this patient I was working with, a young woman. She was in her mid-late 20s. She had just had her youngest of 3 children. She had 3 boys, beautiful kids. And she got diagnosed with terminal cancer, breast cancer. And her name's Christy. And actually, I have her before and after of her breast cancer scans on my site, by the way, because I don't fuck around. Like, these are the things, it's just like seeing is believing. And so she came in. Her father actually is the one, I think maybe he, I don't know, came to one of my lectures or something like that, but is the one who referred her. And we put her on to a protocol. Major change. First, we got to identify, like, where is the potentiality with, first of all, I mean, I don't want to get too much into this, but carcinogens, like they're cancer-causing agents. There's going to be a tendency towards cancer growing and developing if you're engaging with some type of carcinogens. So anyway, so we did a lot to like remove possible carcinogens from her life, bringing a lot of anti-cancer therapies and implements. And 30 days later, she got a breast cancer scan done. And her breast tumor was significantly smaller. But I'm bringing this up to say this. What happened though was you could see in the initial scan, like her liver was like lit up. Around her adrenals was just like super hot. Like it looked like it was just like they were inflamed and on fire. And then you could see this 30 days later, and you could see there's less of her because you can also see the outline of her body. There's less of her, but all this inflammation was gone. Like that flame, the fire, all that, the stuff that was lit up 30 days prior, that was gone. And she's long story short, she's alive and well today, by the way. And I didn't want to make this about, again, this is a hard things to understand. And I worked along with her doctor. We did some hormone therapy as well. But these are the things that are possible. So we're going to reduce inflammation. We're going to dramatically decrease your susceptibility to severe reactions because your body isn't already trying to fight an infection.